This book has a title that's pretty much impossible to ignore. But what if the secret to its insane success isn't really the profanity? What if it's a surprisingly deep, even ancient philosophy hiding right there in plain sight? Let's get into what Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck is actually all about. So, first off, let's just wrap our heads around the scale we're talking about here. 20 million copies sold. I mean, this isn't just a popular book, it's a full-on cultural phenomenon. It is clearly tapping into something a lot of us are feeling.
And yet, for every single person who loves it, you'll find someone who says this, that it's just, common sense dressed up with a catchy, sweary title. So, which one is it?
All right, let's really try and get to the bottom of this. Is it just a fad, or is there a genuine, really useful philosophy packed in here? To figure that out, we have to start by tearing down the biggest misconception about the entire book. Okay, so the title itself is kind of a trap, right? It makes you think the goal is to reach this state of, blissful indifference, to just stop caring about everything and everyone, to basically become numb. But Manson argues that's actually a really dangerous and totally misguided goal. The real point is, it's the complete opposite. It's not about not caring. It's about being incredibly selective and intentional with what you care about. Because the idea is you only have a limited number of fucks to give, and you've got to choose them wisely. And that leads us right into the first big idea, the art of choosing. I mean, how do you even decide what's actually worth your energy? Okay, think of it like a financial budget, right? You only have so much money to spend. Well, it's the same with your emotional energy. Manson calls it your fuck budget. If you waste it on trivial stuff, you're going to be emotionally bankrupt when it comes to the things that truly matter. And this is where it gets super practical. Manson basically splits our values, the things we choose to care about, into two columns. On one side, you've got stuff like pleasure or always being right. He calls these shitty values because they create problems you can't solve. They depend on things outside of your control. So the actual shift in your head, your inner dialogue, goes from trying to force a feeling like, ugh, I have to stay positive, to asking a much better question. What good value can I practice in this situation? It takes you from feeling powerless to being proactive. But, just choosing good values is only half of it. You still have to deal with all the curveballs life throws at you, which brings us to what is maybe the toughest pill to swallow in the entire book. So Manson's argument is that we get psychologically trapped because we mix up two completely different ideas, fault and responsibility. See, fault is about the past. It's about who's to blame. Responsibility, that's about the present. It's about what you are going to do right now. This is Manson's killer example, and it's brilliant because it's so extreme. Finding a baby on your doorstep, obviously not your fault, but you can't just close the door and walk away. The second you see it, it becomes your responsibility. And that same uncomfortable logic applies to pretty much every unfair situation in your life. So this gives you a kind of mental toolkit for any tough situation. Step 1, just acknowledge what's actually happening. 2, consciously separate "this wasn't my fault" from "this is my responsibility." 3, realize that doing nothing is still a choice. And then finally, you get to decide how you'll respond. This one sentence, this is the whole thing right here. It's a little script for your brain that shifts you from being a passive victim who's just placing blame to an active person who solves problems. It's about taking your power back, no matter what happened. So if you start accepting responsibility for your problems, the next logical step is to completely reframe what problems even mean for your life in the first place.
I mean, we're all kind of sold this fantasy, aren't we? That happiness is a life with no problems. A beach somewhere, everything's finally sorted out. But Manson says that thinking is actually a recipe for misery. He just flips this entire idea on its head. He says real happiness doesn't come from avoiding problems. It comes from solving better and more meaningful ones. Think about it. The stress of raising a child is a way better problem than the stress of being lonely. The goal isn't to get rid of problems, it's to upgrade them. And this really puts you at a fork in the road. You can stay in what he calls the victim loop, blaming others, waiting for someone to fix things and just staying stuck. Or you can choose the growth path. Take ownership, solve the problem in front of you, and earn the right to face a better, more interesting problem next. So all those negative emotions, pain, fear, anxiety, they aren't signs that you're failing. According to Manson, they're more like a biological signal. They're a call to action, basically your brain telling you, hey, something here needs to be addressed. There's a problem that needs solving. Okay, so after all of this, you might be thinking,
This sounds kind of familiar. Choosing what to care about, accepting what you can't control. Is any of this really new?
And you'd be absolutely right. It turns out that Manson's very modern, very profane advice is basically a new spin on a philosophy that's over 2,000 years old, Stoicism.
The parallels here are just striking. The Stoics said to focus only on what you can control. Manson calls it your fuck budget. The Stoics taught that our beliefs cause our suffering, not events. Manson reframes this as the fault versus responsibility thing. It's the same ancient wisdom, just in a modern, much louder package.
So, let's go back to our original question. Profound philosophy or just a passing fad? Well, it seems like the answer is kind of both. The genius of the book isn't that any of it's new. It's that it's a brilliant, modern translation of a timeless operating system for the human mind.
So, I'll just leave you with the one question that the entire book is really asking you to think about. What problem in your life is not your fault, but is 100% your responsibility to solve?